You're listening to Entrepreneur's Enigma, a podcast about the ups and downs of the entrepreneurial journey. Every week, your host Seth Goldstein interviews entrepreneurs from all walks of life about their entrepreneurial journeys. From store owners to Fortune 500 CEOs, we all have stories to tell. So sit back and join us for the next 20 or so minutes while we explore the entrepreneurial world.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of the Entrepreneur's Enigma podcast. I am your host as always. You're sick of me by now, but I have good guests, so that's why you keep coming back, I'm sure. Today I have Patrick O'Donnell. He is a retired City of Milwaukee Police Sergeant with more than 25 years of street experience. This guy has seen a bunch of stuff. He's one of the good cops out there. We were talking prelim call. We were talking about how he was a beat cop. Like he really invested in his community, which I love cops that are invested in the community, want to see people succeed when everything's going against them, pretty much. He is now the author of 10 books, and which is including his upcoming thriller, The Good Collar. Dum dum dum. He is a host of the popular Cops and Writers podcast and runs a 7,500 member Facebook group for crime writers. He's also the host of the True Crimes television documentaries and consults with crime writers for their books and screenplays. So he's the guy who, makes sure that Chicago PD isn't doing something really off the wall. We would never do that kind of stuff. Come on, guys. So Patrick lives in Wisconsin, where he enjoys working out, riding his Harley, and spending time with his family and his new Chihuahua, who does not like the Wisconsin weather that much.
You are correct, Claire.
Hey, Patrick, how's it going, buddy? How you doing?
It's going great. What an honor. Thank you for having me, sir.
Well, thank you for your service. I mean, I don't think people thank police officers enough for their service.
You'd be surprised.
The good ones who put in 25 years on the police force. That's. I was a cops reporter for a local newspaper. I lasted 6 months. The stuff, and I didn't see any murders. I just saw some, cars wrapped around trees, a few arms here or there, a few bomb scares. I mean, I lived it up, but 25 years of it, jeez. Oof.
It went
fast. And getting shot at and being put, in dangerous situations. See, I come after the fact. You're you go into the lion's den. So thank you.
Well, thank you. But I will add that most people are very thankful, and I think as a whole are good. Their hearts are in the right places. Sometimes
there's bad apples everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, there's some bad apples in journalism. And we're not talking about full outfits at the Washington Post. Die in darkness.
Right.
Anyhow, you can see where I land on that. But there's Stephen Glass from the New Republic, fabricated so many of his stories. Jason Stark from the New York Times or the Washington Post. So there's bad apples everywhere, and you got to look at the occupation as a whole, in my opinion.
One of the things that people forget about, or maybe just don't know, is that people who live in the worst neighborhoods across this country are some of the biggest police supporters you'll ever find.
They're saving grace. Yeah.
Well, when I got promoted, I had to go to community meetings. And every community meeting would have a Jerry Springer moment. I remember my boss warning me. He said, "You're going to have the Springer thing." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He says, "Somebody's going to stand up and go mental and throw chairs and blah 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 blah." He said, "Let them vent, let them get it out of their systems, and then move
maybe
on."
Talk to them after the fact, saying too, "You gotta calm down, dude."
Yeah, but here's the thing: not once, and I've been to a ton of these things. Had I ever heard anybody that actually lives in these communities say, "I want less cops"? They want their own cop in their front yard. They want a squad car. They want a fleet of squads on their block.
Because because literally when you look at Philadelphia, for example, which has its bad areas. Milwaukee, where you worked, has some really bad areas. But the areas where there's been more of a cop presence, a good cop presence, like in the center city of Philadelphia, crime's gone down through the floorboards because there's a presence. Yes. Not because cops are going after people and locking them up. It's because they're deterring the bad actors from doing something.
Well, and you know what? And there's something to be said about throwing people in jail that need to be thrown in jail.
Mm-hmm.
Criminals belong in jail. Let the system do its thing. And it's a balance. What's really difficult is you start your shift and you're like 30 or 40 assignments in the hole. There's 30 or 40 people waiting for the police to come to them. And it's all by priority.
Worker.
Oh, yeah, but it's all by priority. So it's, okay, somebody stole your kid's bicycle out of the garage, or the shooting.
You can wait 45 minutes to 5 hours for that. I mean, the bike's going to turn up eventually. Even a car, I would say, if a car gets jacked and no one's hurt, you'll find the car in a day. It might be in pieces.
Yeah, not always. But yeah, it might be in pieces, or it's at a chop shop, in 100 different pieces. But yeah, so you also want, I'm a big believer in beat men, having a beat cop. And, I tell you what, man, they know all the sinners and the saints on that block. They know the hookers. They know the petty thieves. They know, Aunt Mabel that lives 2 doors down that has, uses a walker and has a hard time cutting her grass, or
knows Aunt Mabel who will beat the crap out of a pimp with her handbag with a weight in it.
But they know, Prime example, I get transferred to a slower district, and I had a carjacking, and
this doesn't sound that slow, buddy.
Yeah, yeah, I know that. You
come
weird,
in,
right?
You bring the speed.
Yeah, so we had a fairly good idea of who did it, and I went to the beat man that was in that area, and he's like, "Yeah, I know exactly who you're talking about. He works out at that gym, and he's there at 2:00 every afternoon. You want me to go scoop him up for you?" And I'm like, yeah, let's go do that. So it literally, sometimes, not all the time, it's literally that simple. And it's like, dude, you know why we're here, right? And
he's like, oh, damn
it. Yep. But that's the power of the beat
the car?
Man. Yeah. That's the power of having somebody, and it has to be the right person who knows how to engage with their community and knows how to talk and knows how, they're worth their weight in gold. They really are.
And they're invested in the community. They're invested in the kids. Like you were saying on the previous call we had, how kids will, that you think they're not going to make it, end up becoming police officers.
Yes.
Like and then they go back to their community, and they're the beatmen in their community because they know everybody.
Well, but here's the squeeze on that.
We're going to take a quick break, hear from our sponsors, and get right back to the show.
Okay, like I said before, you have 30 or 40 or 50 assignments waiting for you. Can I afford to have that 1 or 2 or 3 beatmen out there on a bicycle or walking when I'm behind that much? And there's people, I've got priority 1 and priority 2 calls waiting. So it's that balancing act. And there's fewer and fewer cops out there.
Saying, like, we could have avoided that beating or something like that if we had that cop on the ground, but it's a catch-22 because you had 50 things to get done, and then that one, you might not have been in a call yet.
Right, and then on the bureau side, the investigation side, it's like, okay, one of the biggest fallacies you see is like, okay, the homicide detective catches, a homicide. And that's all they're doing for the next, week or 2 weeks or month or 3 months.
It's never the way these documentaries make it out to be.
I know. No, they've got a pile of homicides they have to work on.
They're multitasking.
It's not just one. Yes, absolutely.
When something comes in that, is a break in a case, they'll go jump on that one for maybe a few hours.
Right, but there's a lot of detective work is tedious and boring. And almost mind-numbing because you're redoing something.
It's not Chicago PD, is what you're saying?
I love that you say Chicago PD because my wife used to love watching it. And I got to the point where she's just like, I can't watch this with you anymore. And I'm like,
you're grumbling. It's not done that way.
It's horrible. It's like there was an interrogation scene. There's the spunky female detective that is like telling this guy, talk. She's like screaming at him, and he's handcuffed behind his back, which would never happen in an interrogation room. And she's armed. And I'm like, we never go into an interview /
because it's not safe
interrogation.
For them or you.
Yeah, exactly. But here's what happens.
You might go and shoot him, or he might get your gun and shoot you.
Yes. But here's what happens. She's like, talk. And he's like, blah, blah, blah. She takes out her gun and puts it in his mouth. And it's like, talk. And I'm like, he can't talk. You have your gun in his mouth in the first place. Second place, these are recorded. What people don't... In 2025, every interview, interrogation, whatever, is recorded. A judge is going to see it. A jury is going to see it. Your boss is going to see it.
So if your gun's in there in someone's mouth, you're not in. You're in
You're
jail
going to prison.
yourself. Yeah.
No, you're going to prison. Yeah, sorry, you're going to get arrested and you're going to go to prison. So
and that's
I
not
see
going
stuff.
to be fun for a cop in prison.
No, not at all. So I see stuff like that, and it just makes my skin crawl. I'm like, oh my God, this is so ridiculous.
I don't even see that in the journalism aspects of things. Like, you know, there'll be people like in shows, you know, breaking protocol, which I mean, I'm sure young journalists do all the time. But like, you know, like that person said something on background. You know, you don't give that up. Like, it's on background. That's sacred. Like, if someone tells you that off the record, you don't put that in the article. It's not an anonymous source. It's that can't be quoted. You have to get that quote from someone else that will go on the record. So it's wild how TV just glamorizes and takes major liberties. And I'm sure because you said you've done television documentaries and consulted with crime writers for their books and screenplays, reading directly from the script there, if it sounds that well said. But I mean, like, I'm sure you've seen ones where, guys, you can't, we would never have done that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you're just like, no, that, you know what, you could take some liberties, but here's the thing. I believe if you're an author or a screenplay writer, you have a responsibility to try to get as close as possible to the truth and the way things happen, because people actually believe this is truth because they see it on a screen, they read it in a book, and it's like,
TV is true, right?
Right. But those are your potential jurors.
I know.
You know, and it's like, how come you can't get that fingerprint off that rock? I saw it on CSI.
Oh, CSI is the funniest. I interviewed a guy for CSI, an actual CSI, for when I was working in the paper about some, like, I think it was like a dead body in a cornfield or something like that. Like I said, I never heard any murders in South Central Pennsylvania. There's more cows than humans.
Yeah.
But like, and they make great cheese. Not Wisconsin cheese, but they make good cheese. But I was talking to CSI. He's like, I can't watch CSI Miami or CSI Las Vegas because it doesn't work that way. It's like, if it worked that way, it would be lovely, and I would love for me to be able to get this done this way. But it's AI. Back then, AI wasn't in existence. But I'm sure even now, even with AI, half that stuff that they do, like crop and zoom in and then enhance. Like, oh, come on! I mean, even with a Ring doorbell, it's not that good.
Right. But I tell you what, through my career, I saw the evolution of personal video. You know, when I first started, you would say you had a homicide, you know, somebody's dead on the street. One gangster kills another gangster. It was almost a nightly thing when I first started. It was during the crack wars. It was like in 95. Yeah. And, you know, you would do what we'd call, you know, a canvas, a neighborhood canvas. You're knocking on doors. Did you see anything? Did you hear anything?
Did you see anything? Or now it's like, did your camera see anything?
See, that's the thing. And here's how I learned this. I knew you could go like to Sam's Club or wherever and get a video recorder, you know, a camera for your garage. People that live in these neighborhoods are sick of getting their bones picked clean. So they put up cameras. Sometimes it's just a deterrent. Or, you know, hey, there's the guy who's stealing my stuff, you know, or tagging the garage.
Pirates.
Right. You know, but a lot of times, you know, in the inner city, it's all alleys. And, you know, that's where a lot of the stuff happens that's bad.
You're out of sight of the main road.
Correct. So they put cameras up there. So, you know, I've got a dead body in the alley, and I tell my cops, I'm like, okay, start doing the canvas. And one of my cops is like, hey, Sarge, look up there. And I'm like, what? He said, don't you see it? And I'm like, no, what are you talking about? This is when it first came out, cameras. He said, that's a camera. I just picked one up at Sam's Club a couple of days ago. And I'm like, really? And I'm like, okay, go knock on dude's door. So they knock on the door, and the homeowner was great. And he's like,
this is my dead body in his backyard. Come on.
Right. So he's like, yeah. He said, you want me to play it for you? And I'm like, yeah. And we literally watched 3 guys beat this guy to death on this guy's television at home. And I'm like, I am in shock.
And you're like, can we get a copy of this, please?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's when I called CSI, and I'm like, hey, you need to come over here and make a copy of this. You know,
well, that was when CSI comes in, and they're not pinching Zoom, and then they might pinch in Zoom, but it gets grainier and grainier and grainier.
Right.
It's not now enhanced.
But here's the thing. Here's how you solve a homicide. It's like, okay, In Milwaukee, there's a ton of neighborhood taverns. Almost every block has a neighborhood tavern in like the inner city.
Yeah,
And this guy was dressed up like he was going out. And I'm like, okay. And this was an area with a lot of illegal aliens. And they do a lot of manual work, which means they have a lot of cash. It's cash is king. You know, the roofers, the whoever, it's all cash business. So he's at the bar. You know, there's a neighborhood bar like a block away. I said, go to that bar, see if you know, talk to the bartender, see if he recognizes, take a look at, what he's wearing.
Well, a guy in
full
suit is going to stand out like a sore thumb.
So my cops go there, and it's like, hey, you know what, Joe Blow, he's like, yeah, he's a regular. He was here, he had a very big wad of cash in his pocket that kept on falling out. There was 3 young gangsters in here.
Oh, geez.
No, but he was drunk. I mean, alcohol doesn't make you do smart things.
No.
So unfortunately, these 3 gangsters followed him, and, did they have to kill him? No, they just did anyways. But the bartender knew all 3 gangsters. We had all 3 of them in custody by like 8 o'clock in the morning.
That's when, you're like, all right, shut that one, that of 50 off the deck,
Yep. So that's, so that was my first experience with like, holy shit, this really works. Yeah. I'm like, damn, this is pretty impressive.
Yeah. So when you left the police force, like, I know it must have been difficult because it's like 25 years in this is what you know. This is what you do. What made you go into writing, essentially?
Well,
all these stories, I'm sure.
I'm a huge fan of the saying, dig the well before you're thirsty.
Okay.
And I had the luxury of knowing when I was going to retire from police work. A lot of people don't have that luxury. And I don't take it lightly. It's like, okay, after 25 years, I can pull a pension. And it's a full pension. And I'm like,
nice.
Okay,
so
cool.
You can support your next job.
Yes. I started when I was 30, and okay, do the math. I can pop smoke at 55. I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah. Not bad. And it is a young man's game. It ain't an old guy game like me.
Oh,
I wouldn't want to be doing that.
Shows like Voight on Chicago PD. It's like, yeah, he's not running like that. Come on now.
No.
He's not running like that after how many years in this
No, running after 20-something-year-olds when you're in your 50s is not fun in an urban environment with fences and all that. Oh, my God, it sucks. But anyways, so I had that luxury, and it's like, what am I going to do? I had a very long list of stuff that I didn't want to do. Well, and I'm like, all right, I don't want to be a mall cop. I don't want to be the security guy working at 1 o'clock in the morning guarding, like whatever. That's not me. And I loved my job. I loved what I did, and it becomes your identity. Everybody on that block knows you're
soldiers. I mean, that's what happens with soldiers too. They're like, that's what they know.
Yeah, but here's the thing: you go to a cocktail party, you go to a family function. You're not Pat. You're Pat the cop. It's gonna come out without you saying it. Yeah. Without you saying it, it will come out. And people are like, what's the craziest thing you've seen? And I'm just like, could I just have a drink and let's enjoy this? Why do I have to talk
my
about this
brother-in-law is a cop, and my stepbrother was the former DA of our county.
Okay.
And so I know I try my best not to ask him questions that much.
Yeah.
And it was hard because it was me, the journalist, a
sure,
cop, and the DA. And like Matt, I love him to death, sweetest guy in the mankind. He's now a judge. He would never talk to me about anything because he knows that unless he says off the record, even if he's my stepbrother, he's on the record.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
So that was tough. That was tough. When we both got out of the business, it was better.
So what happened was, before I was a cop, I got a 4-year degree in sociology. My minor was criminal justice.
Oh, so that's helpful.
And a 4-year degree in sociology, I was qualified to work as a restaurant manager, and I sold cars. I sold cars for 4 years.
But that's not bad because you have to read people that way. You learn
oh my God! I learned how to talk to people. It actually worked really well. I hated every second of it. Working for 100% commission is not fun at all. So,
but you learn so much.
Oh yeah, like you said, you learn how to read people really fast. You could tell when somebody's lying to you. You could tell which was everybody. Yeah,
Right.
I'm here
They're
just
always,
looking.
and you're lying to them, they're lying to you. I mean, talk about cutthroat.
Yeah, but so be it. But that's also, you're in business for yourself. Yeah, I'm working for John Lancaster Toyota. No, you're not. You're working for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Because John Lancaster, he doesn't give two hoots about you.
No,
He'll
it's your
fire you in
100%
the blink
commission.
of an
It's your
eye.
business. That's your
Yes.
car that you're selling.
Yep.
He gets his cut because you're reselling his car, but it's
Correct.
Yeah, it's you.
You're in business for yourself when you're doing that. And I enjoyed that entrepreneurial spirit. And, I sold cars for 4 years. Then I became a cop. But I helped a lot of people buy cars after that when I was a cop. And it's
You
like,
knew
okay,
the system. Yeah.
yes, I knew how to do this. And now, it's almost fairly simple because you can get so much information on the internet. There isn't.
Yeah.
Right. It's a different world from when I was doing it. It was in the early 90s. And you would have to, get the Chicago Tribune to see what, dealer cost was. And it was always off, always.
Oh.
And, so be it. But I was helping family, friends, and somebody said, you know what, you should write a book about how to buy a car. And this is when Kindle publishing was just starting, where you could self-publish a book.
Yeah.
And I'm like, So I did some networking. I found a gal, a friend of a friend that was a pretty established author. She had an agent in New York, and she's like, hey, I'm going to New York, next week. I love your manuscript. I'll pitch it for you. And I'm like,
Nice.
Fantastic. Then my buddy calls me a day later, and he says, hey, just so you know, I kind of got into a fight with her, and she doesn't like me that much right now. And I'm like, okay. So I called her up, and I said, I hope this doesn't interfere with our relationship. She said, oh, no, I already threw that piece of garbage. I already threw your manuscript in the garbage. I'm like, what? She says, if you're his friend, you're not my friend. I'm not doing shit for you. And I'm just like, okay, so much for that. So then I thought to myself, well, I started listening to podcasts about self-publishing, and I'm like, all right, I'll go this route. And it was more or less, it was a glorified PDF with a terrible cover. But you know what? I remember I was in the gym, and I just finished writing this. It was literally a PDF, like I said, and I had a couple in my car. If you have a nonfiction book, always have some in your car, because you never know when it's going to come up, or fiction as well. And there's two guys complaining about buying a car. I'm like, hey, you know what? That's what I did. I said, hey, you know what? I hate to be eavesdropping here, but I think this could help you. And I said, I'll just give it to you. He said, no, we want to pay you. I said, no, don't worry about it. He said, no. So he gave me $5, and I'll never forget that.
First sale, yeah.
Yes, and I'm like, wow, that was kind of cool.
It's a rush. It's a dopamine hit. It's $5.
Oh.
Like now it's Wendy's. It's barely Wendy's, but still, it's $5.
Oh, hell. I was like, somebody's paying me for some dribble that I put on this piece of paper, and I'm like, out freaking standing. I love it. So that really caught me. And I'm like, okay. So I started going to writers' conferences, trying to learn the craft, trying to learn, indie publishing, etc. And inevitably, people were coming up to me, and they're like, oh, you're that cop guy. And I'm like, I'm not wearing a T-shirt. I don't have a sandwich board, and
you don't have a donut in your hand.
Right. Yeah. Actually, I do like donuts, but I don't eat them because Oh,
they're horrible for you. Yeah.
Yeah, but they are tasty as hell. There's no doubt about that.
So
but
anyway.
Donuts,
what a surprise.
Yes. Well, what was open at 3:00 in the morning or 4:00?
Exactly. And when people are cops and donuts, and you're like, oh, be quiet.
Yeah. But anyways, so I wrote a couple more books that had nothing to do with police work, and somebody that knew a lot more about this business than I do that said, Pat, you're banging your head against the wall. Write what you know. And cop stuff, and you're in the writer community, and
you're getting yourself. Yeah.
Yes. And it's like, and at the same time, I'm getting really close to retiring from police work, so the timing worked out. And it's like, okay.
Isn't it amazing when that just happens? It's like,
yeah, but it was also hard work. It didn't, just happen. It was
you're a 10-year overnight success.
Yes, exactly. So I wrote 2 books. It was called Cops and Writers, and it was specifically for authors that write crime, stories.
Yeah, saying like this is right, this is right, this is wrong.
And
Don't you dare say this because it would
yes,
never have happened.
yeah, like the first one was from the Academy of the Street, the nuts and bolts. How do I be the equipment, the jargon, blah blah blah. Second one was crime scenes and investigations. Who does respond to a homicide? Who, or a sexual assault or a child abuse or whatever, and how do they investigate it? How are these crimes solved?
These are awesome tomes. Yeah, exactly.
So I wrote those, and they started selling like crazy, and I'm just like, oh, that's cool. But what I did was I started the podcast, the Cops and Writers podcast, to promote the books.
Yeah.
But then that just kind of blossomed, and I had started the Facebook group. It was my editor and like 2 buddies, and now there's 7,500 people from literally all over the world, and we just answer the questions that these crime writers have.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like a domino effect. It was like one thing happened after another, after another, after another, and I'm just like, wow, this is kind of cool. So that's what I do now.
Yeah. So all right. So you kind of worked for the man back when you were in the car dealership business,
Yep.
in the car business. Then you worked for the government.
Oh.
I mean, like, not that, you think, federal government's messed up. I mean, talk about city government, town government. Oh my God, the stories I can even say as an outsider, as a journalist, the stuff that would go on in these cities and towns that I would cover are ridiculous. And
Yes.
now you're an entrepreneur, you're an author. What is the best thing about being an entrepreneur in your mind versus, being a cop? It sounds like you had an awesome and trying 25 years, but you have stories, you lived it, and, what's the best thing about being an entrepreneur now?
The best thing about being an entrepreneur is, I'll use an example. My wife had a total knee replacement about a week and a half ago.
Oh, jeez.
And our house is not built for somebody that just got a new knee. Lots of stairs.
Yes,
We have a
tri-level.
We have a freaking tri-level house. So, and the main level doesn't have a bathroom. Upstairs and downstairs have bathrooms, but not the main level, where the kitchen is and the living room and all that. So, she requires a lot of help from me, which I'm more than happy to do, but I can wiggle and move my schedule around as I see fit.
Yes.
When I was on the job or any other job, I would have had to take an FMLA for like 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
I would have had to taken off of work and
been there
just
for her, lost money or
and just
yeah.
absolutely, and just did that. Whereas with this, I make my own schedule.
Yeah.
And you
if
know what?
Move
And
a podcast, you move a podcast. Yeah.
yes, and if something succeeds, well, good for me. It's because I made it happen.
'Cause you made
If
it
something tanks, well, guess what? It's because of me. I didn't do something right or whatever. I've got one person to blame, and you're looking at him.
Love it. So on the flip side, what's the hardest thing about being an entrepreneur?
Oh, boy. The toughest thing about being an entrepreneur, I think, is the highs and the lows. Like you were talking about dopamine hits, and as far as like the author community, it's great, but it could be a very solitude kind of job where I was used to being around the guys. I was used to like extreme camaraderie.
Yeah, you had company.
Yes, exactly. And now a lot of entrepreneurs, with, side gigs or, the gig economy, side hustles, etc. A lot of it, you're in front of a computer or whatever. So a couple of ways to combat that is, we live in an age where, you got a laptop and I hop on my motorcycle and drive out into the country to a coffee shop and do my work, or a library.
Get out of the house.
Yes, exactly.
I love that.
I have a schedule that I try to stick to. And if I've got a deadline, and, there's another thing, my deadlines are my deadlines. The last book that I wrote, The Good Collar, it was my deadlines. Obviously you have editors that you're working with,
but
cover designers and all that.
Do your deadlines before that. So if you have to miss a deadline, you can move it a little bit.
Right.
But it's your deadlines,
I mean, the 4 books I wrote before that was with a publishing house, and they were with the rapid release philosophy, which is like every 2 months you're putting out a new book. So
Oof.
I talk about your nose to the grindstone. I was like, oh, okay, but if I missed a deadline, and I didn't miss any deadlines, that would be my fault. I got
Yeah.
one person to blame, me. So
Exactly.
there is added pressure. There is, for some people, there's no safety net. When you're an entrepreneur and
All or
things,
nothing sometimes, yeah.
like look at TikTok. I know people that make a ton of money off of TikTok.
But TikTok goes
You know,
poof, then it's like, now what?
exactly. So that's why here's a little pro tip. Your newsletter is golden. You own it. You own your newsletter. That's not going away tomorrow.
Unless
Facebook
you
could
make it
change.
go. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Facebook could change, in a blink of an eye. TikTok gone back. Who knows
Within
what?
6 hours.
Right, exactly. Talk about
Who
having
knows
a
when
heart
this comes
attack.
out on March 4th when this is coming out? Who knows where TikTok's going to be at that point? Who knows?
Right. It's anybody's guess. I remember when there was MySpace.
MySpace was fun. I liked MySpace.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, you're rolling the dice a little bit, but it's also fun. It's exhilarating.
It is. So what's the most important thing to carry with you all the time?
Well, as far as carrying with me, I have my money clip. And when I was in the car business, I had a couple of the older guys was like, "Kid, always have $100 bill in your wallet." And I'm like, "What's that?" And he said, "You know what? You never want to be, as a man, I mean, this is a long time ago. As a man, you don't want to be without money. So always forget about it. Just pretend it's not there. Don't use it unless it's an emergency." And there's going to be an emergency. It's nice to be able to whip out that hundo. And I'm just like, all right. So I still do that to this day. And let's see, I've got a cigar cutter and lighter. I've got an astronaut pen.
Oh, those are the best. Yeah.
That thing is cool as hell. I can't tell you how many times I've used that. And I've got a pocket knife. And what else do I have? And a pair of reading glasses and my earbuds.
It happens to the best of us.
Yeah, and some earbuds because I'm in the gym every day. So
Good for you.
I always have them in there.
So practical
that's-
things you need to carry with you. Absolutely.
Yep. And I guess philosophy-wise that I carry with me every day
Woo.
is make your own luck.
Yeah.
Yeah, here's a perfect example. I released those 4 books in like 6-7 months. I did a book signing at a cigar lounge that I frequent. And I could have just done it, but I made flyers. Well, I didn't make them. I had people that knew what they were doing because it would be stick people with me. And I had nice flyers I put up. I promoted it on Facebook. And then I called the local newspaper. And I pitched it. And I said, hey, you know what? Yada, yada. And one of the reporters like, yeah, let's do it. I want to cover
We're always
this.
dying. Journalists are always dying for a story.
Yeah. And then she called me like a day or two before that. And she said, I'm going to have to interview you over the phone. I can't make your event, but take a lot of pictures. And I'm like, okay, fair enough. Well, sure enough, she writes not 1, but 2 stories about me. Former Milwaukee police sergeant, now author, has, blah, 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 reinventing himself after retirement.
And you get the photo credit, yeah.
And none of that would have happened if I didn't make my own luck.
You don't ask, you don't get. It's that simple.
Right. Exactly.
Love it, my friend. Well, Pat, thank you so much for being on the show. This has been so much
Thank you.
fun. It's one of the longer ones, but I knew it was gonna be one of the longer ones because so much to talk about. And dynamic. I really enjoyed this thoroughly. Everyone, go check out his podcast, the Cops and Writers podcast. Go pick up his books. I'm gonna go pick up a book and go read one of your books, especially the Cops and Writers one. I'd be interested in that. That'd be a good one.
Read The Good Collar. Imagine if Dexter was a police chaplain.
Ooh.
He can sneak in and out of crime scenes. Nobody thinks this guy is a serial killer.
Well,
making all the wrongs
the good
right.
Collar, I get it now.
Yeah, exactly.
I see what you did there. Awesome. All right, Patrick, thank you so much, and we'll see everyone next week.
Thank you.
That was a great show. If you're enjoying Entrepreneur's Enigma, please consider giving us a review in the podcast directory of your choice. Every review helps us reach new listeners. If you like Entrepreneur's Enigma, consider the other shows on the Marketing Podcast Network at marketingpodcast.net.
Goldstein Media hopes you have enjoyed this episode.